All right, David, do you want to give a brief introduction? I think most people here know about the lab. So.
Yes, my name is David Pearsall at McGill University in Montreal, Canada. Welcome to our lab. We're going to be speaking from work related to the Ice Hockey Research Group and also from the Sports Science Institute on running. So I'll pass it off to you, Kate.
Great, thank you. So we're going to get started with a introduction to biomechanics. So Ida, I will hand it to you.
Great, thanks. Yeah, I'll share my screen and then show my presentation. I think I'll unshare and make sure that I selected the share my audio when I share my screen.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, it was clicked. Okay, great. Yeah, so my name is Ida and I'm a postdoctoral fellow in the research lab. I'm one of the few that doesn't do hockey biomechanics. So I will do a background on what is biomechanics, very general. So I'll start off with showing a short little video. I saw this video at a conference and I really enjoyed it. So hopefully you guys enjoy it as well.
What is biomechanics? It's the story of us, how we move through the world, forward, backward, up and down, under and over. It's a story about technology, science, music, medicine, sports, and art. It's written in equations, steps, rotations, collisions, code, and sweat. It's full of setbacks and successes. Biomechanics is a story built on the past, informed by the present, and envisioning our future for a better world in motion. We tell this story so that no matter how we move, we're always moving forward.
Okay, so now I'll go a little bit deeper and touch on some of the topics that were talked about in the movie or the video. So first of all, what is biomechanics? So biomechanics is a word that's made up of bio as well as mechanics. And bio means life or living being. And then mechanics is the study of the action of forces. And we can study either external forces on a system, but we can also study internal forces, such as muscle forces within the human body that produce movement. So therefore, essentially, biomechanics is the analysis of mechanical aspects on human movement. There's a lot of applications for biomechanics, especially in sport. So I'll talk about a few in sport. So a big one is performance for sure. So oftentimes when we look at performance, we might study methods to achieve different things such as peak velocities, peak accelerations, peak force applications, and in order for athletes to be able to either run faster, hit a puck faster or harder, or hit a golf ball further, for just a few examples. Understanding the biomechanics of the environments in which we do sports is also really useful for athletes and maybe improving their technique. So for example, understanding fluid mechanics for swimming or different water sports, or understanding the concept of friction and the different components that make up friction could be really useful in skiing as well to improve technique. And when we learn about these different environments, we often look at the different forces that are applied by the environment to the athlete. Biomechanics has been used a lot in equipment development as well. So now many big athletic companies have in-house labs where they test their products before they put them out on the market. So for example, Nike is definitely a company that has a big research lab. And here I have an example of like your quintessential like training running shoe, the Nike Pegasus, and its development over the years. And another thing that Nike is very famous for is now developing
And she's back.
I think I got disconnected. I will be back. Okay, so back, yes, to the Nike marathon shoe. So it's a bit of a controversial shoe right now. There's been a lot of research from the last couple of years done with it, and that's probably why it looks kind of very different from the typical running shoe that we are familiar with. Another sport where there are a lot of equipment development is in hockey as well, and my lab mates obviously will speak to this a lot more. So for example, lots of research in different sticks, and on the right here I have an image showing a setup, an in-lab setup for testing hockey helmets with a linear impactor. Another application is determining like what limitations an athlete might have that's holding them back in successfully completing a skill. So some limitations could be athlete strength, their endurance of certain muscle groups, or their speed of movement. So in this example, for example, to achieve like a really good jump in skating, an athlete might need to understand different biomechanical concepts like initial velocity, moment of inertia, and angular velocity. And if we move away from sport, we can also use biomechanics in the field of rehabilitation for injury prevention and rehabilitation. So biomechanics can be used for the development and testing of different rehabilitation devices, such as braces, prostheses, and orthotics. And a proper understanding of the biomechanics of human movement is really useful for rehabilitation practitioners in order to prescribe proper exercises for rehab. Or also to monitor someone's movement to see if they're displaying any like aberrant movement patterns that could then lead to injury. Finally, biomechanics is also used in the field of ergonomics. So ergonomics looks at the interaction of a human in their workspace, and really the goal is then to optimize a workspace in order to try and reduce the musculoskeletal injuries that might occur at their jobs. So often biomechanics, we study what we call rigid body mechanics, and rigid body mechanics is looking at, I guess, systems or bodies that do not deform and the interconnection of those bodies. So rigid body mechanics can be further divided into statics or dynamics. So statics is the study of a system at rest or in a state of constant velocity. And then dynamics will be the study of a system that's in a state of acceleration. And dynamics can then be further subdivided into kinematics and kinetics. So kinematics is what we'll talk about a little bit later today, and it's a description of motion with respect to time. So, and that we'll talk about displacements, distances, velocities, accelerations. And kinetics is the study of forces causing the changes or motion of a system. So talking about forces, torques, moments, and so on. So in order to study these different components, we need to get some data. So in order to do that, we use a quantitative analysis. So we'll collect biomechanical variables, we'll analyze that data, and then we can look at kinematics and kinetics. There's a variety of different tools that we can use to do a quantitative analysis. Here I have just two examples of very simple tools, but that give us still good information. For example, a goniometer we can use to measure joint angles, and then a scale, obviously, to measure weight or mass. But we're also really lucky now to have a lot of really cool tools that we can use inside a lab as well as outside in a natural sporting environment. So if we look at the top right-hand corner here, we have your classic motion capture system that's set up in a lab with markers. We can also have a similar system but without markers. So here we just need to use cameras, and it's a lot easier to use and a lot more feasible and a lot more transportable to different environments. So the example where the blue skeleton is overlaid on the person pitching. A few other technologies, for example, with this person jumping, is inertial measurement units. These are just little sensors that we can affix to the person's different segments on their body and get a lot of data from those sensors, and those two can be used within in a lab or outside of a lab too. And then finally, the last example I have is a runner with EMG sensors on her body. These are used to measure muscle activity. So just a few different technologies that we can use within biomechanics. So with these technologies, we can measure a whole lot of variables. If ever you take a biomechanics class or learn more about it. These are definitely all terms that will come up in the study of biomechanics. And one specific one that we will look at today is velocity. So what is velocity? Velocity is a change in displacement over a change in time. So we can get an average velocity if our time is kind of a long time, but we can also look at the velocity at a very specific point in time called instantaneous velocity, and that would just be over a very, very, very short period of time. One specific thing about velocities is that it's a vector quantity, so it has a direction. And now I will show a quick little example of how might we calculate velocity if we have some movement data. So here I have two little columns, X is time and Y is position. And let's say we wanted to calculate velocity, then we would look at the first two cells. And we would use our equation from the previous slide of change in displacement over change in time. And that would give us the velocity at time point 0. So here is just an example of a ball being thrown up in the air and then going back down. And then we could, in the third column, get that velocity and then plot it. And then we have our velocity of our ball moving in space. So that's all I have for my quick little introduction of biomechanics. It's very general and very broad, and definitely there's a lot more to biomechanics than what I talked about today. But I'll pass it on to my lab mates.
Thank you, Ida. So now I'm going to give a really brief intro to our lab and what we do. My name is Kate. I'm a PhD student in the lab. Been there for, let's see, I'm going on my 4th year, and I study skating coordination and knowledge translation. So looking at how we take the information that we have learned and get it out to the people who use it. So I'm gonna share my screen really quick. Okay. Actually, I'm gonna make sure I'm sharing my sound. I'm gonna do the same thing that that Ida did. There we go. Okay. Let's try this one more time. Okay. Perfect. So for the ice hockey research group, we research the ergonomics and mechanical function of equipment, including skates, sticks, and protective equipment. So things that we've looked at over the course of the existence of the hockey lab. We've compared how changing different features of the skate might affect performance, different stick features as well, like the flex and things of that nature. We've looked at blade positioning during certain shooting tasks, protective equipment. We've looked at recently looked at head fit in helmets for hockey helmets. We also look at performance, so skating kinematics, for example, looking at what's actually happening in with the body when you're skating, not just forward skating, but skating starts. We've looked at cutting maneuvers, and there's still plenty to be explored now that our technology is really becoming more portable and more accessible for on ice testing. We're looking at skating coordination during forward skating and start skating starts as well. So how the different segments of the body are moving in relation to one another over time. And then looking at things like shooting accuracy as well for different shots. And we compared high caliber and low caliber skaters. So seeing, the idea is the high caliber skaters are going to have performance that is more ideal. So we'll look at their performance measures, compare them to a different group. We've compared male and female skaters. So we're just getting as much information as we can about hockey. This is an example of some findings that we've had as far as shooting tasks. So we're now starting to work on how we're getting this information out. So this is a graphic that was created this is an example of some of our male and female differences that we found in skating. You can see male skaters have a greater stride rate, but females have smaller step widths. So there are some foundational differences there. And then here's an example of high caliber and low caliber comparison during forward skating. So you can see that our high caliber players had greater knee extension at push off during that phase of skating, but then fast low caliber skaters, so these are low caliber skaters that are performing a little bit better than the slower low caliber skaters. They have increased plantar flexion at push off. Now I'll show a quick video. Hopefully it will play. This is what testing would look like. All right, so that's an example of what testing might look like for when we're using the cameras for 3D motion capture. Our demo today is going to be a little bit different, but all of that is to end up with the recreation of that movement using the computer, looking like this with our skeleton skater. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing. So now to the fun part. We'll hand it over to Phil and Sam for the live demo.
All right, hey guys. Welcome to the Ice Hockey Research Group's lab here at McGill in Montreal. Most of you know where it is, except for maybe one of you that's logging in, but hopefully the people who watch the recording. So you see, I'll just give you a quick tour. As you can see behind us, there's lots of stuff going on, but you can see some cameras, some 3D cameras that are set up. We're not going to be using those today, but you can actually see how we have them set up in our lab here. You can see the net over there as well that we use to do some of our testing on the ground. You can see our artificial ice surface that we use to do a lot of our testing. We do a lot of testing also in the arena. But for today, we're going to be doing our little live tutorial here in the lab. So I'm Phil. I'm the research assistant for the Ice Hockey Research Group. I've been here for 5+ years. I also did my master's here. This is Sam. So Sam, you can give a little intro.
Yeah, so I'm a first-year student in the lab, currently playing for the McGill Redbirds hockey team. So I'm considered the guinea pig of the lab. So by many, especially David.
Yeah, so it's nice to have Sam as part of our group. He plays high-level hockey, so we use him a lot as our kind of, as he said, our pilot tester and whatnot. We actually are just pilot testing his project. We're on the ice surface, which was kind of, there's a cement surface. There's no more ice right now at the rink, but we're testing his project out. So what you can see what Sam has on him right now, back up with Sam. So we actually have Sam, he has the Extend suit on now. So those of you who aren't familiar with the Extend suit, well, Ada kind of talked about it just quickly in her presentation, that IMUs are inertial measurement units. So they have these suits, and Extend is kind of considered the gold standard right now of suits that you can use. So there's 17 sensors all over his body. Some of them you can see here. on his upper body. There's one on the head. There's one here at the pelvis as well, and on the lower body too. I'll zoom down, do some on his shoes right there. So basically what this does is that it'll give us a full body model of what Sam is actually going to be doing right now. So we're actually going to take a few shots. And so this is kind of how we do in the lab here. We'll have some pucks ready to go. Actually, I'll show you a puck. We'll use sometimes also when we're using the cameras, the Vicon cameras, we'll have markers on the puck. So we have 4 here, so we can actually track spin and velocity like Ada was talking about earlier. So we'll talk a bit more about puck velocity. And we also have on the stick as well, we'll put some markers on the stick so we can track what the stick is actually doing when the person is shooting as well. So we can track all that. Thanks. So we'll just let Sam take a couple shots and you can kind of see how we kind of have it set up here. Cool. So things that we are normally interested in, or some type of projects that we care about when we're doing shooting studies, that will have different types of sticks. So as you saw in maybe Kate's presentation on her initial slide, we have a good working relationship with Bauer Hockey. So they provide us most of the equipment that we're using, most if not all. So the sticks, even the gloves, skates, and the helmets that we were talking about. So we help them with testing those products and getting feedback from the players, but also kind of the actual statistical analysis that we do. We can provide them reports. So things that we sometimes care about is there's different stick models, so different weights, different blade patterns, and things like that, like Kate said. So in this project that we just completed, we're looking at 4 different stick models, different blade patterns, different flexes. How does that affect shot performance? So Sam took a couple shots here. I'm going to share my screen to show you exactly kind of what it looks like in the actual Xsense. So here's kind of just a view of what the Xsense looks like, the interface. So here you can kind of see an avatar of the person and then on the right here, you can actually see all the different sensors here, and they're all labeled here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open a trial that we actually collected when we were in the arena last week. What do I want to see here? And we'll show. So this was a one-timer shot. So the puck was coming towards Sam and he was taking a shot. I'll just let that load for a sec. And we'll play it. Okay, almost there. Just playing, so Sam's getting set up. Unfortunately, you can't see the puck, but you can actually see him take the shot there. So what's actually really cool about Xsense is that I can open up a graph here, and then I can go over here on the left into Sam's model. I can go to, if I want to look at the joints, and I can look at, let's say I care about what the left elbow was doing during the shot. I can drag and drop that joint angle into this graph, and I can actually see live right after I recorded that trial what's going on with his left elbow here. So you can also see there's also stuff happening here. So it's obviously when the shot was happening. So you can see in the radial deviation, ulnar deviation, the pronation, supination, and the flexion extension here of the actual joint. So we have all the different joints here in our list, knee, ankle, all those different stuff. We can also look at segments. So what is a full segment? So kind of his whole head, doing the whole shoulder, the whole hand, and things like that. We also get a estimate of center of mass. So we can look at center of mass position, the velocity, and the acceleration. So that's pretty cool. So what's really powerful about Xsense is that we can put these sensors on and the person could be skating all over the ice surface. So we are not really limited to what the cameras that you can see here are giving us, because with the cameras, it's really a field of view or a capture area that's kind of limited. Although the limitation to Xsense is that we can't really get puck data or stick data because we don't have those sensors. So we're working on trying to figure out the best way to marry both of the systems together, and that's why you can kind of see why they're both set up here. So yeah, so that's kind of the live demo, what we do in the lab, and what XSense looks like, and kind of some of the projects that we're working on right now. So there is, I have some data ready, but I think we'll talk about that in a little bit, if I'm not mistaken, Kate.
Yeah, we just can open it up to any questions or anything that might need some clarification or anything that we want to talk about more. If anyone has any ideas. David, is there anything that you you would like us to go into more detail on, or that you want to swoop in and add to?
Yeah, well, I think it's what you've seen. And thanks everybody for the presentations they've done. It's very exploratory, you know, as we saw from just trying to understand the basics of shooting can be very complex in terms of all the different types of body motions. So part of the work we're trying to do is look at the fundamental aspects of how exactly do you get an expert like Sam here and to do it so well, and then maybe translate that to training techniques or product development. So how does Sam feel being a guinea pig?
It's good. Can't wait to actually work on my project. So yeah, like we said, pilot testing has been done last week, went well. So now we're moving forward. Hopefully in end of August, beginning of September, we can start collecting some data. Perfect.
I feel really good having Sam as a guinea pig, because he knows what's going on. He's always there to help, so that's great. So I'll just share my screen again quickly and kind of show this little activity for those who might be watching the recording. I'm going to show you what I got prepared just quickly here. I guess, Kate, while I'm doing this, if you could just, I guess, share the link in the chat or for the actual data here. So I put together just a few questions here. So it's just an Excel sheet, and then on the bottom there's a few different tabs here. So here are the questions, but I'll get back to that after. But there's 4 tabs. So there's stick A, slap shot, stick A, wrist shot, stick B, slap shot, and stick B, wrist shot. And basically what we have here is a whole column of data of 100 data points on each. Here. And it's the same for each one on the left there. It's all 100. And this data here is the puck velocity. So like Ada was talking about before, we were talking about velocity. So each one of these tabs has the puck velocity for each one of these, what we call trials. So each trial here, I inputted the velocity of the puck for stick A for this slap shot, stick A for the wrist shot, stick B, and so on and so forth. So the questions that we have here is what we'd want you to try and figure out. Nothing too crazy, but something a little fun is which one of these trials had the fastest slap shot? So there's 2 slap shots, there's stick A slap shot and stick B. Which one was the fastest? Which stick out of the 2 wrist shots had the fastest wrist shot? And then which trial, so the one of the 4 had the fastest shot overall? And then if you can graph all 4 of those trials on the same graph in 4 different colors, that would be great as well, and potentially even show us, you know, where the peaks are, where those maxes are actually happening. So I'm not sure the best if people actually have access to this watching recording, but our information how to get a hold of us, I think, is in the event details. So if you want to get a hold of this data, let us know.
What I'll do, I'm going to share my screen really quickly, and I have the link there. I will also be sharing it when I share the video file. I'll be sharing that link, but just in case anything happens, the link is there. You can access the data by typing that into your browser. I'll go ahead and stop sharing. If you still need it, you can go back and pause the video. But I think that about wraps up our National Biomechanics Day belated event. Thank you so much to everyone who took part in it. Thank you, Lauren, for being our audience for today. if anyone has any questions moving forward, you can always find out more information about our lab on our website at mcgill.ca/IHRG. You can reach out to us using contact information from there, or we're on Instagram and Twitter at McGill IHRG. And David, did you have anything you want to add before we go?
No, just again, thanks for those who have seen this or watching it post hoc. If you have any interest, then don't hesitate to contact us.
All right, on that note, I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you.